What's up? Welcome back. This week on the Changelog, we're talking to Steve Yegge. Storytime with Steve Yegge, as a matter of fact. Steve has been at Google, Amazon, and now he's at SourceGraph, focusing on the future of their coding assistant called Cody. Steve shares stories of making Jeff Bezos giggle, how Jeff Bezos also is able to freeze people, the possible outlook for Google. We talk about sociopathic leaders and how Cody is cheating as a developer. A big thank you to our friends and our partners at Fastly and Fly. Our podcast got you fast because Fastly is super fast all over the world. Check them out at fastly.com. And our friends at Fly help us put our app in our database across the globe, right in front of our users. And they'll do it for you too, with no ops. Check them out at fly.io. So I'm here with Ian Withrow, VP of Product Management at Sentry. So Ian, you've got a developer-first application monitoring platform. It shows you what's slowed down to the line of code. That's very developer-friendly and is making performance monitoring actionable. What are you all doing that's new? What's novel there?
Traditionally, in errors, what's the strength of Sentry is we've taken not a stream of errors and said, hey, go look at this, like all these error codes that are flowing into it says. We actually look at them, we try and fingerprint them and say, hey, we've actually grouped all these things. And then we give you everything you need within Sentry to go and solve that error and close that out. And that's, I think, driven tons of value for our users. And traditionally, if you look at performance, it's not that thing. It's looking at certain golden signals, setting up lots of alerts, maintaining those alerts, grooming those alerts, and then detecting them. And then maybe you have a war room and you try and look at traces, or maybe you realize, oh, it's this engineering team that owns it. And maybe they'll look at logs or whatever they have available. Performance is very rotated on detection and then isolating to where the problem may exist. And root causing is often an exercise left to the user. Good performance products provide a lot of context and details that an experienced engineer or DevOps professional can kind of parse and make sense of and try and get to a hypothesis of what went wrong. But it's not like that Sentry error experience where it's like, here's the stack trace, here's all the tags. Oh, we see it's like this particular segment of code, and Ian did the commit that changed that code, and do you want to fire a JIRA issue and assign it to Ian? Like it's right. Not like that crisp kind of tight workflow that we have errors.
This is breadcrumbs.
Right. And we said, hey, maybe there's no reason why we couldn't do this for performance. Let's try.
Okay. So you took a swing, you tried. Describe to me how that trial works. If I go to my dashboard now and I enable APM on my application, what are the steps?
Largely because we kind of encourage you to go and set up transaction information when you set up Sentry. You probably, as a user, probably don't need to do much, but if you skip that step, you do need to configure to send that data in your SDK. And what happens is we start now looking at that information, and then when we see what we call a performance issue, we fingerprint that, and we put that into your issues feed, which is already where you're looking for error issues.
Right. It's not a separate inbox. This is the same inbox.
The same inbox, yeah. Now, we obviously give logical filters, and if you just want to look at those, we do that. And for newer users, sometimes we detect, hey, you've probably never seen this before. We can we do things because we know we build for mass market to bring your attention to it, but it's the same workflow you have for errors today. So you don't have to learn something new to take advantage of these things.
Very cool. So if your team is looking for a developer-first APM tool to use, check out Sentry. Use our code to get 6 months of the team plan for free. Use the code ChangelogMedia. Yes, ChangelogMedia. 6 months free of the team plan. Check them out at sentry.io. Again, sentry.io. That's SENTRY.io. So we're joined by Steve Yegge. Steve, it's you've had such a career. You're a ranter, a blogger. You upset people. You move along when it gets conservative and not innovative. Where is the best place to begin for you? Should we just go back as far as we can? What's the fun part for you?
Sure. We can start anywhere. Go back to Amazon or my early days in the 90s at GeoWorks, right, in assembly language, or wherever you like.
Where do you think, I'm sure that your entire history informs today for you, but where do you think things began for you in learning as far back in your history that sort of informs most of what's happening today?
So, I've gone through a couple of like phases in my career where the learning was accelerated for one reason or another. You know how you go, sometimes you go and things are just you're just getting stuff done, but you're not really learning anything, right? You're just executing. And then you go through these periods where you're just faced with some incredibly impossible challenge. And that's where you learn, right? You learn when you're you're in the fire, right? You're in the fire and you're screaming and you're like, I'm learning. I'm learning. Right? I mean, seriously, you can feel it when you're learning. And one of the early ones, I mean, it's embarrassing that I call it an early one, but it was like almost 30 years ago. I was writing a computer game and I was trying to make a massively multiplayer. I had a big vision for it and I was trying to do it kind of myself. And that's where you learn a lot, right? You're a founder, entrepreneur, startup. And it's where I learned that I needed better dev tools. And it's where I learned I needed better languages and better frameworks. And I realized everything was like, a dumpster fire. So that's one example. But I mean, there were others. I mean, obviously, Amazon was an unbelievable learning experience working for Uncle Jeff.
Uncle Jeff,
Big B.
I thought it was Dread Pirate Bezos.
Dread Pirate Bezos. Yeah, he is.
That's hilarious.
Kind of defies description. You know how like they say Jobs had a reality distortion field? I never met Steve Jobs, but everybody said that he'd just come into the room and bend reality, right? And, Bezos would do that too. He would just sort of bend everything to his vision, right?
Huh.
And his vision was like just insane. And none of us believed it. I mean, we all believed in it at some level. But when he kept walking around after 4 years, or 5 years, and we're super successful and we've got all these product lines, and he's like, it's still day one. And we're like, come on, Jeff, isn't it day two? This is back in like 2003 when our stock was like $200. Yeah. So yeah, he was right. We were wrong.
So did he have the vision for AWS? It seems like he did, the services. And it seems like he kind of dictated everything's going to be a service, and this turned into AWS. Is that how it worked, or am I reading it wrong?
So I had an insider tell me after I wrote my platform rant, okay, because it got a lot of attention at Amazon, and there was a lot of truth to what I said. Certainly, Jeff, we did have extra compute power and off cycles, and there were other reasons to do it. But the insider told me, one of the engineers said that basically Jeff was always afraid the company was going to die, and that he was going to have to do a DE Shaw. Remember, Jeff came from DE Shaw, I believe, before he went to Amazon. He was a Wall Street guy, one of those types that buys up companies and chops them into pieces and sells them off.
Okay.
And so he designed Amazon to be choppable into pieces. Okay. And the way that you do that is you make everybody basically an autonomous business unit. Every team is completely, sort of self-contained, and they have their own API boundaries, and they're basically replaceable. And that led to AWS, actually, in addition to the technological advancements and the compute power and the other factors.
Yeah. One thing that you wrote recently for SourceGraph on the cheating is all you need is you wrote, did I ever tell you about the time AWS was just a demo on some engineer's laptop? No, you haven't told me about that time. I mean, you tell it in a paragraph there, but you want to tell that story and flesh it out for us? I mean, it had to be, everything has meager beginnings, but did you know when you saw that demo or when the people saw it was like, okay, this is going to be huge, or it was like, oh, cool, let's try it?
We thought it was weird.
What was so weird about it? Yeah.
Like, why would you make a perfectly good RPC call, like a high performance binary call over some fat text protocol, right?
Right.
It didn't look, we had performance drilled into us. Amazon was always the victim of scaling because we were always growing so fast. So we were always crushed under the load. And it was like, hey, let's try this slow protocol for RPCs, huh, guys? And it really kind of went over like a lead balloon, right? At first, we were like, that's weird. But, as we started to sort of like understand what it was capable of, and that was back during the soap versus rest wars. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah.
Rest was really cool, but everyone was like, no, soap, because we're all stuck in our old object.
I was gonna say, why did anybody like soap? Most people were like, soap.
No, but there was a time when soap was the thing.
All right, so strongman soap, like, why was it cool? Give it the best argument for why soap was good.
It was familiar, right? It didn't require you to learn anything new. It was sort of like Corba or any of these other ORM layer or whatever they were, right? These pub sub sort of systems.
Yeah.
And it was object oriented, and that's kind of what everybody was doing back then.
Right. And it was XML, right? I mean, it was a bunch of XML.
I'm surprised it didn't have XML and inheritance.
Yeah. Okay. So people were liking soap. I think, it was familiar. That's why we stick with a lot of things, right? Because it's what we know. Mm-hmm. And REST was the new hotness. But this text protocol, not only unfamiliar, but not performant with regards to the things that you're saying. So like, what were the virtues? It was weird, but it was weird good, obviously. What were the virtues of this change, in retrospect that turned into what it is?
Well, I mean, for starters, and I've been saying this for 35 years, and I will continue saying it until I'm dead. All right, and I'll keep saying it. I'll come back from the grave.
Oh my goodness!
And I'll haunt you with it.
You're right, I will.
Yeah, which is that text is king.
Okay.
And binary formats are wonderful and have their purpose, and we use them all the time. But text is the ultimately flexible, ultimately debuggable, human readable. It's a currency, And we're seeing that even more now with large language models,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
But even back then, there was two schools of thought. One was performance is everything, and put the burden on the backs of the engineers to figure out how those bits work, right? Seriously, we had people at Amazon. I'm sorry, you guys are going to get me ranting.
No, that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, this is our goal.
No, I'm saving it, but a little. I'm sure I'll really get going here in a bit. But I mean, there were guys at Amazon who were like, don't ever use regular expressions because they're slow. And then they would write a 2,500 line C++, crappy parser that was actually slower, or it didn't matter. I mean, like they had wasted all this time on this giant, ball of legacy tech debt, right? When they could have just used a regex. But it was just anyway, yeah. That camp of the bits camp. And, come on. I mean, like, I resonated with him. I worked at a company, GeoWorks, where we did nothing but 8086 assembly language. 8086, not 8386, not 80x86 with their fancy 32-bit registers. No. Okay, we were working with 16-bit registers and this awful, Intel architecture. We did this for 5 years because, we were like, performance is king.
Right.
And guess what? We died because text is king.
Performance was not king.
It's not.
It's important, but not king.
It's not king.
This should inform us, though, that we look at things like SOAP or REST and this argument, gRPC, over a binary protocol versus a text protocol. You can look at that, too, and juxtapose that to now, where people are naysaying, the AI direction we're taking. Basically just pushing down future. Let's stay with the past, was familiar, and not embrace the future, which is just comfortable in the moment, but long-term short-sighted.
100%. I even saw a comment on Hacker News in a discussion about LLMs. It might have been actually after my first cheating post. And somebody said, I can't wait for all this LLM stuff to just go away so we can all just go back to doing our jobs. I mean, it was almost like I could have written a better troll comment if I had tried, right? It was like, what is he? But seriously, there's people who they have their heads in the sand and they're waiting for it to all just go away, which is pretty funny because I don't think it's going anywhere.
No. Well, it's going somewhere, but away is not the direction that it's going. Yeah, it's amazing how disparate the reactions are to it. We'd play a silly game on our JS Party podcast where it's like Family Feud. It's called Front End Feud. And so we survey the audience and we ask them how they feel about things and, what their favorite and least favorite programming languages are. And we asked them recently, this was back in November, so big change, but it was GitHub Copilot. What are your feels about GitHub Copilot? And the answers are all over the board, from excited, surprised, can't wait, to terrible, doomer. It goes so broad. And then there's people all along the spectrum in the middle about what we're thinking about this. Not very many technology advancements have, I guess, that drastic of a reaction. I wonder if the this AWS stuff inside of Amazon had the spectrum of support that we see for LLMs. You're also around when Kubernetes was first, being worked on inside of Google. These major shifts, like did AWS have so many different opinions about it inside Amazon, or was it kind of like, it's weird, but then eventually it's like, yeah, this is the bee's knees?
An interesting question. I wish that I could answer that, but AWS didn't really get kicked off until sort of when I left Amazon in 2005. So I'm actually older than AWS.
Wow.
And it's funny because for a lot of people, AWS is, of course, part of the fabric of the universe. But I can tell you that at the time that I left, Amazon was, of course, a company that was just absolutely filled with opinions, but there was only one opinion that really mattered.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 3 guesses whose it was.
Right.
This story you told that was pretty interesting, speaking about Jeff, and I guess a semi-dovetail from AWS was that A Good Day with Jeff. That post, I was really enjoying that. I didn't get to read every single note in it. I was like looking for the bad guy moments, but you're a great writer. So kudos to your ability to write so well.
For sure. Yeah.
But then this story to like how you, all the details of how you got to this meeting, and it's back in like the boathouse area, and all the idiosyncrasies of that. Can you share just like a little bit of that? Some of that story?
Oh, tell the story?
Not the whole thing, but like a version of like this first meeting Jeff and this figure that we all know so well, but you've met in person and got to sort of see that opinion live.
I'll tell you a story I've never written down before. You guys can get the scoop. How's that?
Oh, nice. Yeah, we'll take it.
That story was cool, but you can read about it. It was just basically we all went to Jeff's boathouse to talk about AI back in like 2003, and it was premature, but it was a pretty fun story,
Go read it.
But there was another meeting with Jeff that it's a story I do love to tell, and I've never had the opportunity to write it down. It was my first meeting with Jeff, actually. And I was a technical program manager. It was in my first year at Amazon, so this would have been 99. Because I joined in late 98. And my boss was Kim Rackmiller. She was the group program manager. She's the best program manager on earth in history, actually. She taught me the art of being a TPM. And then we had Jeff Wilkie with us, right? Who's one of the best leaders that I've ever worked for. 2 amazing leaders, right? Me and Jeff. And I'm just like, and they told me to shut up. They were like, Steve, don't say anything at all unless he addresses you. All right.
Okay. Scary.
Stay on your knees, keep your forehead to the ground, all that stuff. Right.
Spoken to. Yeah.
So we're like, we're in this like tiny room in the, this Transylvania looking castle building that we were in, the PacMed medical building in Beacon Hill, Seattle. Right. It's a big, intimidating looking. And he's in the top corner wing in this corner office, real small office with a, corner window view of the sound. And we're sitting in there like at this tiny table, and Jeff's back is to the windows, and right, and we're pitching him on my project, right, which is one that he asked for. It was a team, what they call a 2-pizza team, right? Jeff came up with these 2 pizza teams, these tiger teams, basically, right? And it was for reducing customer contacts, and he wanted fitness functions. Now, this is a great way to run teams, having an objective function. Right. I mean, it really, seriously, if you can find like a function that you can drive up and to the right, then it's a great way to run a team. But finding the right objective function, right, is a really challenging problem for some problem domains. But for mine, it was really simple. It was like we're trying to reduce customer contacts. So our function is customer contacts, right, over time. And it was the shortest fitness function that anybody had presented. A lot of people had been presenting Jeff with these really complicated mathematical functions of many, many terms, weighted terms, right, that are going to be, this is how their team's performance is tracked. And he would argue with them and throw it out and curse and scream and whatever. And right, not scream and curse. He was always very quiet, but you would feel him cursing and screaming at you like somehow in your mind. I don't know. It was very intimidating. And it was mostly because he was so smart that he would just pick holes in everything that you showed him, right? So we knew that we were going to bring this to him and he wasn't going to lie. There was going to be something wrong, but they were like, Steve, don't talk. Okay. We got this. Okay. So Jeff listens to the pitch and he asks one question and he put them into a state of complete paralysis. Have you ever seen when you draw a line in front of a chicken?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. And like it thinks it's a snake and it just freezes. Right. So they both of them, sorry, Jeff and Kim, amazing leaders.
So I have a chicken analogy here.
They froze deer in the headlights because Jeff asked something that nobody had ever heard of before. He just out of the blue, he goes, every fitness function has a yin and a yang. what are they for this one? And they literally turned to stone. It was the wildest thing I've ever seen. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at Jeff, and I'm like, and all all the algorithms don't talk, that.
Oh gosh,
Right.
yes.
And but they weren't saying anything. They were just sitting there, like, right?
How long?
Like,
Right.
now,
How long? Like minutes?
at least like 5 to 7 really uncomfortable seconds passed, maybe 10. I mean, it was like long enough
Right.
that I finally said,
Slow
I know
motion.
what the answer is.
Okay.
And they all looked at me, and I swear to God, I swear to you, okay? They looked at me like they were drowning and I had thrown them a life preserver. Okay? Like see the exact same look in
Thank
their
you
eye.
for saving me.
Right?
You're right.
And Jeff, of course, kind of slowly turns to me like, oh, it talks, right? And now all the pressure's on me. And of course, I had a total of 5 seconds to assess the situation, parse his question, come frame an answer. And, and so now I'm on the spot, right? First time I've ever talked to Jeff. And I told him, I said, look, we could have done some fancy, complicated function here, right? That will track it more accurately. The problem with this function is if we just say we're reducing contacts, then we can just route you to an automated system that takes care of you got a free replacement issue? We'll replace it for you. Just self-service. The contact goes away. It's not counted by finance because no customer service person ever talked to it. But that would be the wrong thing to do because we're not fixing the root cause. If we just give them a new sweater, then we haven't fixed the problem at the upstream in the distribution center or the supplier or whatever that caused them to get the wrong sweater in the first place. And he started nodding and he goes, yeah, that's it. Right. I said, the yin is the,
Oh my gosh.
right. And you could see them like defrost and the conversation started to proceed again. And boy, it was wild though. It was wild. He could take the most seasoned, brilliant leaders and freeze them.
Huh.
Wow.
Well, congrats on having an answer. So,
Right.
not being one of those chickens, but I'm so dense, I may not even follow the yin and the yang. So the yin is that it's really simple, but the yang is like, well, we can game it. Is that what you're saying? Like it can be gamed without actually fixing the problem? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean,
I'm over here on the answer. I'm trying to understand the answer.
What's the logic of the
100%.
question?
Yeah.
That is right. That was approximately the level of, like, I think he might have winged the question.
I don't know
It
that.
sounds like a question that's like made up.
The way I would interpret that really is the way that yin and yang works is that it's two fish in perfect harmony because they're chasing each other's tail and they can never catch each other. So they coexist forever in their pursuit of their pursuit. And so the same here with, if you're just trying to reduce contacts with customers, that's the yin or the yang, pick one basically. And the yang is the upstream of how did the problem exist in the first place. And so that's what he was asking.
Well, that's really beautiful, Adam. I wish you had been there.
Well, I had more than 5 seconds, Steve, so I can assimilate that.
and none of the pressure of Jeff Bezos staring at you. I mean, that's just got
I'm sorry, I have to do this, Jared. I have to do this. Ring the bell. My answer really comes from watching Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
So I learned more about the term yin and yang. That's a joke.
Missed it.
Yin and yang.
A lot of these guys come in here and they can do all the engineering stuff and they get all hung up on technicalities. They can't just tell you what their vision for the company is. It's like you need both halves of the brain, right? The Jobs and the Wozniak, the yin and the yang.
Oh, I think it's yin.
Yin? Like yin and yang?
No, like yin and yang.
No, it's yin and yang, they're opposite. So Pied Piper, drop it on me. What is it?
Because of Silicon Valley, that was explained in that TV show. Not to that detail, but the concept of yin and yang, which I knew already, but it was like just explained to me like I'm 5, explained in the
Right.
TV show. So there you go.
Well, I just want that power to just be able to make people freeze and, crap themselves in their desire to please me with some sort of an answer. I mean, that would be a superpower that I guess would be kind of fun to have. Don't you think, Steve?
I certainly saw it wielded a lot. It was wielded frequently. I'll tell you another story. I mean, seriously, like every time I met with Jeff was kind of like an interesting experience. Like for example, did you know that he had a survival keychain?
No.
Like in case he ever got trapped under earthquake rubble or something. He had some really fancy
Earthquake rubble.
Yeah, tell me more. What is a survival keychain? It's gonna like
I don't think he ever showed it to me. I just heard rumors about it.
okay.
And he took one photo every day, which was like a big deal back in the 90s when, like, I don't know, like, where would you put him? I don't know. People thought
S3?
there was a time when people actually thought that was like a big deal.
Yeah.
But the story I was going to tell was I had to do a presentation to him. It was called the Fundamental 50. It was a proposal that I had made to make our engineers kind of more broadly generalists, which was something Jeff always wanted. Okay, Jeff's dream was that engineers were just chess pieces, not even chess pieces because those are different.
Checkers.
Okay, checkers pieces, right, that he could just move around, right, fungibly from project to project because that's the easiest way to plan. But of course, it never works out that way in practice.
Right.
So anyway, I was trying to sort of level everybody up with this sort of effectively a training program, and they liked it enough that they decided to put me in front of Bezos. And so I'm sitting there, but this time it was in a larger conference room, and I had about 10 or 12 of his lieutenants sitting around the table, right? All this, his cabinet basically. And I don't want to throw anybody on the bus here, but I was a little disappointed because I gave my entire presentation, all right? And Jeff was very engaged. He was sitting right next to me, very animated, right? And the way you give presentations to Jeff is you write a 5-page presentation because he doesn't like PowerPoint. You write 5 pages of text, and then you randomly remove like 30% of the paragraphs, all right? To let him fill in the gaps, right?
Is that right?
Just to make it harder to read?
Do you like put the blanks there, or is it like there should have been a paragraph here?
No. You just like literally like skip stuff and just cut stuff and let him make the leaps. Cause like, if you're not, it's like Franz Liszt, he used to be so good at sight reading that he would like on his first read through, he would play it correctly. And after that, he'd start embellishing. Right. And Jeff's mind is just like, think about it. The dude, he's smart to begin with, but he also sits in meetings all day long and basically gets opinions and perspectives. And you do that for a few years, and all of a sudden you've got a general's view that nobody else has. And so they can spot things. And so we prepped for this stupid presentation, right? And, we were excited about it, but I went to probably 12 principals and engineering directors and said, vet this for me. It's going to Jeff. And we all vetted it, right? And I showed it to Jeff, and he looked at the list and said, so where's machine learning? And I bust out laughing. I couldn't help it. I laughed my head off. And everyone stared at me in complete shock. Okay. His jury of cabinet members, right? All these VPs and senior VPs that were sitting in this room. Okay. They refused to give any facial expression until Jeff gave a facial. It was disgusting.
They want to be on the right side of history, of Jeff's history.
And they did not want to commit to liking my proposal or not liking it until Jeff had committed, which was the biggest pile of bullshit I've ever seen. So to your superpower, right, the one that you wanted, which is make people freeze themselves trying to please you, you better be right.
Yeah.
The thing is, Jeff was usually right, so that was good, right?
That's a good combo of powers.
Yeah, but if you're wrong, then you're just going to be like super wrong.
Who's going to tell you?
And so this group finally, like, I laughed and I said, "You got me." I said, 12 principals and directs vetted this list, and we forgot machine learning, and you got me straight up. And I congratulated him, and he went ha ha ha, and then we moved on. It was no big deal, right? I said, "I'll get it into the list." And everybody in the room relaxed and started smiling and clapping me and, clapping me on the back after the meeting and come up to me going, "I've been in a lot of meetings with Jeff and they never go that well." And, whatever. Right. And it was like, yeah, thanks for the support, before he smiled.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Drata. Automate and accelerate your SOC 2 compliance, your ISO 27001 compliance, and many, many more compliance frameworks. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata easily integrates with your tech stack through applications such as AWS, Azure, GitHub, Okta, and Cloudflare, and countless security professionals from companies including Lemonade, Notion, and Fivetran have shared how crucial it has been to have Drata as a trusted partner in the compliance process. They have deep native integrations that provide instant visibility into a security program and continuous monitoring to ensure compliance is always met. Drata allows companies to see all their controls, easily map them to SOC 2, ISO 27001, and many other frameworks to gain immediate insight into framework overlap. They are the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture from day one, meaning your data can never be accessed by anyone outside your organization. it is time to say goodbye to manual evidence collection and hello to automated compliance by visiting drata.com/partner/changelog. That's drata.com/partner/changelog. They are bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed.
How much do you attribute to your career success your ability to think on your feet and respond in the moment? Because it sounds like it was pretty key.
You're pretty good at it so far. 2 for 2.
I'd say it's a pretty important survival skill, right?
Yeah.
Especially when things get heated. I mean, it's a leadership thing, right? I mean, like, you're always going to wind up in situations where two people have, pretty heated, opinions that are diverging or not aligned. And, you got to be able to navigate those things and that solution space really fast. So yeah, quick thinking's good.
What's your analogy to that? Do you think it's be like water? Because water takes on any form its container is and can go anywhere, really, if necessary. I suppose heat might change its ability to travel, but because it changes state. But what's your analogy to advice for how to do what you do?
Oh, how to think on your feet?
Yeah, be like water. I don't know. Is that something? I'm trying to feed it to you, Steve. Is that accurate?
No, it's fire. Put your feet in the fire.
Okay. I'm on fire here.
And then say, I'm learning. Right?
See, I expected Steve to have a good answer to that one.
I've been in a lot of fires.
Yeah.
Well, you wrote that they call you the closer at Amazon. Maybe this lines up with that. Because you close sales? What was this idea with the closer?
No, I closed interview candidates. So we would frequently get candidates who had really fat offers from Microsoft or Google or whoever.
I see.
And Amazon didn't pay well at all and probably still doesn't, right? Because Jeff is cheap. And so we'd be dealing with, super, super big comp packages.
Gotcha.
And honestly, the perks too, right? Amazon didn't have any perks. Your perk was you get to work at Amazon and pay for parking. Right? I mean, it was bad.
So how would you close them then? I mean, it sounds like a terrible comparison.
That's the thing is I got every single one of them to come to Amazon. Every single one for my whole. And then when I went to Google, I was a great closer too. And I had a track record that went for, I think, 8 years of complete success, like 50 to 70 people I had closed.
Complete success.
Who had better offers. Yeah. Batting 1,000. And then,
wow.
And then one day somebody said, no. Nah, this is what happened to Amazon too.
Did you just try and pay him off? Listen, I've got a perfect record. You're ruining my perfect record. What's the situation here?
No. I was just why? There was one dude I was trying to get. He was really good, and I went golfing with him. Right, him and our mutual buddy, and I tried to, and I even had a deal with him that if I beat him on this one hole, then he had to come work for me. And it was a par 3, and I got 2 feet from the pin, and he got a foot and a half from the pin. It was nuts. So he went to Facebook. But
that only happens in the movies, Steve. That's not how it works out in real life.
It was wild. We were both trying really hard. I guess he really wanted to go to Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, he could have just disagreed. I mean, it's his life, right?
But I mean, look, I come up with compelling arguments, right? I can make a convincing story. You got to be okay. Here it is. You got to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is something that Jeff believes in, I believe. I'm pretty sure that was I think it was in the Working Backwards book, potentially, just the concept and ability to tell a story. Because that's kind of, I think, what they did with some of the Working Backwards with the Prime, the Prime membership, was you got to tell a story. You can't just put the press release out there first kind of aspect, tell the story, what actually happened, all that good stuff. Because if you just sort of put some KPIs out there and some goals and you achieve it, it's well, did we really do it well? How would this actually be to a customer in the end? And that's always seemed like a storytelling, an important thing for that organization, for Amazon, to storytelling.
I mean, it's important. Yeah. I mean, of course, right? I mean, every company should be doing it. It's your story for your users. It's your user story. And we often make the mistake of putting something out there without a story, but it's a lot of cool, flashy tech or this or that. And, Jeff usually didn't make that mistake. But I will say that Jeff was not always right on his first try. Jeff would often, like, I've written about this, but it's so important. Like, the difference between Jeff and Google is that Jeff would continue trying after he had failed the first time, and Google never would. Never, ever. Google was like, oh, it didn't work the first day, kill it, right? Because they were going for, like, basically a shotgun approach, trying to get 1 billion users, right? It was really interesting. Eric Schmidt was the CEO when I joined, right? And he was, he's a good CEO. I really liked working for him. And he was the let 1,000 flowers bloom type, right? He wanted us to, sort of be an innovation factory. Basically put a bunch of brains in a jar and see what they come up with. There were problems with that approach. One was that, there weren't truly enough of us, and we were also kind of non-representative of the engineering population. So our story was different from the story of the average dev. And so Google wound up building a lot of stuff that was really only good for Google as a result. Mm-hmm. Jeff would put stuff out there and it would be awful. It would be awful. We would did you ever read about the time the guy got evicted from his apartment because we shipped him a book?
No.
Doesn't ring a bell?
No.
Would you like to hear that story?
Well,
Please tell us.
I definitely want to now.
I'm working. So the most eye-opening thing that you can do is go work the customer service queues at your company. Doesn't matter where you work. That's part of the story because you're going to get at the tail end of the story from them. And Bezos was obsessed with this, and he would have a weekly meeting that I was in because I ran customer service tools for 2.5 years at Amazon and built their Arizona system, their web-based system. We switched from command line tools to a web-based system, yeah. And he would review every week what was the histogram of customer contacts, right? Where did these stories end, and were they happy endings or not? There was one bucket for happy, the happy stories, which was positive feedback, and that was usually the lowest, but it was in the top 10. And then there was the number one was always, where's my stuff, right? Bezos had this idea, which I think every leader and every company should emulate, which is get your people. Grab had this too. It's called go to the ground. Is get your people out there using the product, talking to the customers, dealing with the people. Feel their pain. Okay, whether it's in the distribution center or the call center or wherever, right? And so we'd got on these field trips, and one day, and every single time I went out, there was some crazy emergency, which suggests that they're happening all day long at Amazon. So I'm reading this mail from this guy, and he's like, "Dear Amazon, longtime shopper, first time, caller. Just wanted to let you know that I ordered a book from you, and it came, and I opened it up, and it was filled with ants, and they went to my bed, and I can't sleep there anymore. And yeah, I just wanted to let you know." So there was that story. And then on the same day, so that one actually led to me walking by a room with a bunch of VPs with the word ants written in giant letters on the board, right?
Yeah.
The reason for that one was that somebody had been eating food while they were packing the box, and food would fall in, it would sit in the post office, and ants would go in the box, right?
Okay.
They took food away. This was the beginning of taking everything away from the workers. It's horrible. But the other thing that happened was this guy goes, the long story short, man, we had an auth bug with the bank where we went into a retry loop where we would re-auth. An auth, they put $1 charge or whatever on your card to just
they
make sure
revert it.
Real. And then you don't charge until shipping time, but you auth, and it does actually freeze up a tiny amount, right? But if you get stuck in a loop, and the auth at the time was probably more like $3 or something. And so this guy got just enough in our loop that he was using his debit card. So he bought a book, he got offed a bunch of money that wasn't ever going to get charged, but it froze up the funds in his bank account, and all his checks started bouncing, and his rent check bounced, and he got evicted. Okay. And he called us. And the weirdest thing, guys, is that the people who get shafted the worst, okay, the ones who get really, really, really hit hard by our bugs, they're always the nicest. And the ones who are screaming at us over a nickel with froth coming out of their mouth, it's just so interesting to watch the dynamic there. But
yeah,
this guy was one of the super nice ones. And so, of course, we got the Black Hawk helicopters and flew out to the bank and basically held him at, I don't know what.
Don't say at gunpoint. You almost said at gunpoint, didn't you?
You thought this out.
So close.
Walk over, and to make sure that they got this dude back into his apartment.
So you saved the day, or proverbially the Amazon you saved the day.
Well, they also caused the problem.
They ruined it in the first place. But
yeah, exactly.
The key is they did this over and over and over again on purpose, because you'd call Amazon and you'd be like, "You guys screwed me and I'm mad." And then we would say, "Oh, we are so sorry." And we had a pyramid of professional ass kissers to deal with, journalists and stuff that would get, screwed by our bugs. And we would say, we're going to make it up to you. we're going to give you a gift certificate to keep that one. We'll send you another one and we'll give you a gift certificate and a direct line to blah, blah, blah. Right. And you come away going, they were so nice to me. They really get me. Right. And then you've turned this pissed off customer into a brand loyalist for life.
Right.
It was like, and it was because we had no QA. It was like, what was he thinking? And yet it worked. Right. It was just the most bizarre loyalty creation thing. But he was by being customer first, it meant that if they had a problem, he would fix it. And sometimes the problem was pretty terrible.
Yeah, I think getting evicted from your apartment because you bought a book is pretty terrible. Like, that's a bad outcome.
Ants and frozen accounts. I mean, like, that's a double whammy.
Yeah, I mean, we would do simpler stuff. Like in the early days, the distribution center was just a big hash table, right? Because, you have way more SKUs than you have space. And so, you have random items sitting next to each other on shelves. And so inevitably, statistically, some religious family would get pornography, right? Or whatever, because you just sleepy, grab the wrong thing. This is in the early days. So a lot of people got the wrong thing, but sometimes you would get the really wrong thing. But, like stepping back, the way Bezos ran the company, it's, I've talked about him over the years. He did so many things right. And then he did so many things that I found just personally, just morally objectionable. It's really kind of it's nuanced, right? Just same thing with Bill Gates. I feel like, Bill obviously, did a lot of stuff that even the government sued him over and won. That was naughty. He was naughty. Bill's naughty. But, he spent a lot of time trying to, I guess, sort of make up for it and clear his name, like curing malaria and stuff. But the way these folks led their companies, you kind of have to look at it and you have to say, well, are there parts that we can take that led to the success without being jerks?
Right.
And that's honestly been kind of the crux of my leadership struggle. Like, because leadership is a struggle, right? Leadership is always, always hard. And it comes down to, how can I be as effective as Bill and Jeff without being an asshole like Bill or a tyrant like Jeff?
Right. Yeah, it's tough because especially when you do it, if you do it publicly or, in the quote unquote town square, you have a lot of, when you speak with nuance and you speak highly of certain aspects of a person, like you are, right? Like, this was really good for the company, this aspect of him. There's nuance there. Like you said, you're not just with a broad brush saying, therefore Jeff Bezos is awesome in every way. And I love him and I want to be just like him in every single way. But it's hard to get that across sometimes. And you can receive criticism as if you're lionizing the man because you're zooming in on something that was net positive and saying, like, let's emulate this. It doesn't mean that you're, vouching for every aspect, right. But so many people will just read it in that binary fashion that can be.
Yeah, you have to be binary on these decisions, Jared. That's how it is these days. You have to, if somebody's a villain in one way, shape, or form, villain in all the ways. There's no coming back.
We do tend to get that way, right? I mean,
we do, yeah.
And the herd mentality for sure.
Yeah.
To what you say, though, Steve, about leadership and being hard, I think that to the level that Bill Gates, to the level that Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, you pick your well-known FANG organization leader, and at some point in their journey, they transition or already were sociopathic, right? To be in the meetings that Jeff's been with, like these, like you said, seasoned veterans, et cetera, that just crumble in his intimidation factor. You only hit the balls you swing at, right? And to hit that kind of ball, those kind of balls at that level, you have to take a lot of swings. And I think at some point you skew towards, if you don't have the right grounding, into sociopathic behaviors. And that's kind of what you probably struggle with, is like union concerns with Jeff in particular. I've seen you've read about, and the bad, naughty things you mentioned about Bill Gates. I'm not sure which particular things you're talking about because there's so many things that you could mention, some true and I'm sure some not true. But I just wonder if, like, at some level, at that level of leadership, to get to that point, what it takes to get there is somewhat sociopathic behaviors.
Well, we could find a counter example maybe that would disprove the theory. Like, is there a really nice, down to earth, rational, well balanced person that's like the head of or founded and built, Fortune 50 or Fortune 100?
Benioff?
Maybe. I don't know.
So I never met him, but I've heard good things, right?
Yeah.
Or the dude that founded Twitter originally, I think. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know about him. Definitely Benioff, right? I mean, there are examples.
Yeah. So it's possible, but it just seems like it's more rare.
Benioff is Slack, is that right?
Benioff is Salesforce.
Salesforce. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought so.
Salesforce.
I was like, it's like, well, he just.
I mean, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, they own Slack, so you're in the same
Oh yeah.
ballpark there now.
So sociopathic, I mean, yeah, maybe you certainly have to be thick-skinned,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like, because empathy, too much empathy has been my historic failing, and you really have to kind of dial it back a little bit. You have to have empathy, but you can't let it ruin you because too much empathy is gonna stall you. I don't know anything about sociopaths other than that they exist, and I just don't understand how they work. But I do know.
Here's a definition to give some context.
All right.
And sociopathic doesn't mean you have sociopathy. It just means you have it's like an itis. It's like a version of it. It's described as a mental health condition in which a person consistently shows no regard for right and wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others, which kind of describes Jeff in some cases, not in all cases.
Honestly, that would be a really useful life skill. I guess.
Something to strive for.
I guess, but I mean, like, seriously, when you mentioned the word that you used that really resonated with me, Adam, was grounded.
Yeah.
They're not grounded, and that's why maybe that's why they become the way they are, right? Because, of course, over time, anybody can become jaded to other people's problems if they're not, feeling them, right?
Well, if you have a cadre or a jury near you that's well-seasoned veterans that only facially express, when you facially express, those are yes people. And if you surround yourself in no grounding and no people that push back on,
Right.
that really know you and can push back against you, then you're not grounded. You're in your own la la land that you've made up. And it's easy to skew towards sociopathic because you don't have that grounding of regard of right or wrong or
Right.
someone else's right, because you just are so far removed from somebody else's truth
That's right.
that you can't empathize or react in that way.
Right.
So you just naturally hurt them even if you don't want to.
And this is one of the many reasons that diversity at a company is so important, right? And getting a diverse set of voices and backgrounds and experiences, to help ground it, because
Yeah.
I was talking about Eric Schmidt and his failing with 1,000 Flowers. We weren't representative because we were all super homogenous, Google engineers.
Right.
And it was actually a lack of diversity that was holding Google back from innovating, I think, in the early days. Right? We had a few minor wins like Orkut, but most of Google's successes were actually acquisitions. Maps, Mail, YouTube. I mean, I might be wrong about one or two of those, but I mean, like, a lot of them started. Docs was Rightly. They bought it. It was in C#. They ported it to Java, right? Spreadsheets, all that stuff.
How long have you been outside of Google?
Oh gosh, I've been gone for about, I guess, 2017. So what, 5-6 years now.
Okay. What's your assessment now in terms of innovation, the company? It seems like they've had such a lead on AI stuff internally with DeepMind and with tons of effort going into it. And yet, at least from the outside, it seems like they were caught very much off guard by ChatGPT specifically, but just by the general LLM movement here in Transformers. And they're like, having all hands on decks meetings and trying to come out with Google Bard. To me, it seems like they're very much threatened right now. And I mean, search, their moneymaker is threatened by this. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Google's never had to innovate because they found a moneymaker early on.
That's so good. I mean, it's such a moneymaker.
It was so good that they never felt any pressure. They wanted to innovate because they're like, well, we better come up with something just in case. But that was about the amount of passion and energy they put into it, right? and so most of Google's focus forever has been on basically their ads monopoly. And yes, I did say monopoly, and you shouldn't edit it out. I mean, I do not think that Google has a monopoly on most things. Having been there, I can see that we're desperately behind in most places, cloud and so on. And anybody can, in theory, write a search engine to compete, but the ads ecosystem is unbreakable, and that is a monopoly. But that meant that they didn't have any pressure to innovate. Amazon always had pressure to innovate because the margins were so thin, right? In books, music, video days, they had high margins, but Jeff came to us one day and said, that's all going away, and we're going to have to sell other stuff because of digital. And nobody's going to buy a CD anymore, he told us in 99. We were like, what? We love CD. I mean, like, I'm shit. I'm old.
See you again. Holding on to the past.
You probably still have
Right?
your collection. You got a collection?
Yeah. And so Amazon was forced to be innovative and forced to try many, many, many things. And so Amazon got good at innovation. Google never really got good at it. It never did. Now, LLMs have kicked them in the pants. And I
I was
heard,
going to say, do you think that monopoly is really at stake?
well, I honestly, the bigger threat to their monopoly is the EU. And I hope they're successful in breaking it up a bit, right? Because we need to have other players in the ads ecosystem. I don't think ads should ever go away. When you see an ad that's perfectly done, you don't know it's an ad.
Oh yeah.
In fact, if you go on Amazon's mobile app, right, and just shop, like 80% of the stuff you're seeing there is ads. It's
know
targeted placements, right? But
the ones that I'm looking for, like I search for things, there's a little video there. I welcome those things. Like, give me a great demo.
If they know what you're looking for,
exactly.
If I see a guitar ad, I will always be happy, right? So, like, I don't think ads are going away, but the way ads are done today is very much dictated by Google and Facebook. Those are the two networks for slightly different reasons. Amazon is, of course, actually passing them both, but. Again, so maybe Google doesn't have a monopoly on ads because Amazon is making up so much ground, but still.
Well, even Amazon has competition now too with TikTok's shop feature.
They do.
Like a lot of people find things via social and just want to go and buy it. The creator almost misses out on that attribution. It's hard to say, hey, use my links and I get a little bit back. But like they literally put a shop button there on the TikTok video and you can just engage right then and there.
Easy money. Yep. It's disruptive. And, every time we think the giants are done and they've won, they get disrupted. And Google's getting disrupted right now. And it's by the LLMs. And it's that they invented. And it's quite ironic and amusing. But I hear from, folks that I talk to at Google all the time that they've pivoted the whole company to AI. And every team is being asked to train models. And
is that right?
Deal with AI and work AI into their. Yeah, and it's kind of a dumpster fire in that you can't just take some random engineering team and have them fine tune a model because it's a very delicate operation and apparently it's not going very well. So they're in panicking, scrambling mode again. But I'm they also have incredible infrastructure. They still have incredible engineers and they have a lot of power to get stuff done. They've typically been their own worst enemy. They block themselves a lot, but I think maybe now with a fire lit under their butts, they might move a little faster. We'll see.
You got a prediction?
Who's going to win?
Well, do you think
open source? No,
open source. The easy button.
No, easy button. The problem with open source is it's not the model; it's the data that makes the quality of the ultimate thing, right? So open source. It's whether it's open source or not doesn't have as much really bearing as whether you've got really, really, really good curated training pairs. And right now, the big expensive guys all do, Anthropic and Bard and OpenAI, right?
Right.
Let me ask more specifically. Where do you think Google will be at, given this ad monopoly that you've described? The change that can happen there, the shakeup, the reaction. Give me a 5-year. Where will Google be at 5 years from now? What will we be looking at a company that's clawing its way to relevance, remaining relevance? What's going to happen?
I think they'll be fine, right? I don't think that we're going to see this search market overturned. I do think that in a 10-year horizon,
okay,
that's going to look really weird. The old adage about how we overestimate and underestimate, right? But
yeah, 5
years is pretty soon, but 10 years is pretty far. It's a little weird, right? But in the 5-year horizon, I see Google being fine. I don't have any hot takes there, right? They invented this stuff, and what they did was they immediately stopped publishing. They've been going back and forth on this for for decades. Should we publish papers? Should we share our discoveries with the world? Right? Should we open source things?
Yeah.
So TensorFlow, which was originally Google Brain, or maybe it wasn't Google Brain, but TensorFlow was not called TensorFlow originally. And Jeff Dean wrote it at Google, and it was, the new hotness for training and inference. And Jeff published an internal memo at Jeff Dean. We're talking about Jeff Dean. Like, Jeff Dean is probably the greatest programmer of our generation, right? Of our time, the most influential. I mean, you could point at maybe Linus Torvalds. It would have to be between those two. Who else would there be besides Jeff Dean and Linus, right?
I'm trying to think of somebody here. Yeah.
I mean, who are you going to, right? That's the thing is it's hard to pick individual. Things aren't solo efforts anymore. Everything is a team effort, right? Look at the papers.
It's like Ken Thompson, but that's not this generation. That's previous.
Yeah, exactly.
Generation.
Ken Thompson, Dennis Ritchie. Dennis Ritchie wrote the first Go compiler at Google when he was 72 years old. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but that was previous generation, right? Jeff is a generational talent, and he had to write a memo internally saying why we are open sourcing Google Brain. I remember it was actually called Google Brain because he said why we are open sourcing it, which became TensorFlow. And he had to basically mandate sort of by fiat, which he had never done before, that we're going to do do this because there was a big resistance to sharing stuff. But Google was falling behind because you lose thought leadership. If what happened, what Jeff outlined for us was that we kept inventing stuff, publishing a paper on how cool it was and how cool we were. And then the open source world would go, wow, that sounds really good. Thanks for not freaking giving it to us, Google, but thanks for showing us how you did it. So we're going to build our own. So we had MapReduce and they had Hadoop and we had this and they had that. And all of a sudden, Google was the proprietary assholes for everything because of our policy of not open sourcing. And Jeff was like, done with that. And so we open sourced TensorFlow and it was very successful, right? So the pendulum has swung back now, right? And, it's like, no more papers because like they had somehow managed to.
We're giving them our ideas. They're eating us from the outside.
Well, Transformers was Google's idea. So was BERT. I mean, most of it was only up until Sam Altman like crazily said, we're just going to shove it out there and see what happens because Google was too conservative with it.
Right.
All the big names they're trying, but they have to be. They have to. They can't pull out an offering that's confused the users really badly. This is why SourceGraph has been able to kind of like do something cool that's been harder for Microsoft to do. I'm not saying they can't do it, and they very well may, but we went hog wild when the LLMs came out, and we said we're going to live with the occasional hallucination and the wrong answer and whatever, because like if you've got a metal detector that can find rubies, and some of the time it's finding dog poo that you step in, but whatever, right? You clean it off,
calcified dog poo,
right? Whatever, you're still finding rubies once in a while, right? A lot of it depends on your tolerance, your threshold for, or your pain tolerance for how, it's like using regular expressions, right? Once you start using one, you've got two problems now, right? And so some people, it is for some people and it's not for others, but we decided to just open it up and say, look, this is a developer tool that we think would be really cool. And Microsoft and the bigger companies are kind of unable to do that because they need to curate and make sure the experience is really polished, or else their users will be jarred and whatever. And it makes it harder to innovate and be bold because we can go out and try things, right? And see what works. And this, so again, I would say I learned a lot more from Amazon than I did from Google when it comes to leadership and products and finding product market fit. Because again, Google wasn't forced to innovate and Amazon was. And so I watched Bezos try and try and try. He wouldn't give up. He'd be like, I know there's something here. I mean, you can count probably on one hand the projects. The Google graveyard is thousands of projects, right? But Amazon's is pretty small because Bezos will keep changing the shape of it until he finds the fit, right? The only really big one I've seen him fail at was the Fire. The Fire.
Oh, the Fire Stick. Not the Fire Stick, but the Fire Phone. Yeah. Yeah,
that was a fail because the market was just too crowded or whatever.
I heard they're divesting in Alexa and the Echoes and stuff. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
There's no money in it. There's no money.
I think the idea was they're going to sell more retail, but
the idea. I mean, look, I was talking to some Amazon insiders recently, and they were making fun of the poor Alexa team, right? Because how do they monetize? Whenever Alexa says you have a new notification, would you like to hear it? What she's really saying is, I'm running out of money. Would you like to help?
Would you like to help?
That's an interesting one though, because there's so much application for Alexa that I just wonder why they haven't been able to land the plane because...
Well, and they got penetration, like, into the households. They got in there,
They just had to give somebody away. And
I mean, look, I have to imagine that the ML, the sort of step function improvement in ML, they probably were not using large language models before. They were using their own models. And with LLMs, they're probably revisiting it and wondering. I mean, Alexa's, Siri's and Alexas of the world are probably going to have to take a big... I think they're going to get dramatically better. If they don't, then there will be like one on your desktop that you can talk to that's dramatically better.
Right.
They're going to get replaced if they don't get better at this point.
This is why I was saying Apple needs to do something with Siri. I mean, it's so embarrassing at this point. I thought they would announce something at WWDC because everybody's just talking about theirs and they're so much better. Siri's so embarrassing, and yet not a peep at WWDC. They're just not doing anything with it. It's just like, what?
I'm sure they are internally working very hard on it.
They have to be.
They probably are. Here's a question for you, Jared. We just had this conversation. It was kind of to you, and Steve, you can participate because you're here. And thank you for being here, by the way.
Yeah, gee, thanks.
Steve, you can also answer if you want.
No, you can totally answer. Will they call it AI? I mean, they resisted calling it VR with the Vision Pro. Like, they literally danced around the buzzwords. Will they use the AI. Well, they say AI.
I don't know. I'm not going to answer. They're so particular with the way they say things and name things to a fault. I mean, the way they refer to iPad,
They category
just
create.
bugs me to death. You know, like they won't say the iPad. They'll just say iPad. Like that stuff's all very intentional and calculated. And to me, that makes me not like them as much. You know, even though I like them for lots of reasons, it's just like there's something weird about that. So the way, I don't know what they're going to call it because they probably have meetings upon meetings about what they're going to refer to it as. They did say transformers a few times. They stopped saying machine learning. They started saying transformers. So I feel like that's kind of a nod to us nerds to be like, what are you using there on their autocomplete or something? Mm-hmm. So that's my take. I have no idea. Steve, you probably have a better take than that.
No idea.
Yes. I tied him. That's right. Same exact response. I want to go back to this Google thing for a minute. I thought maybe this is a better way of casting it, which might be enjoyable to think about. So 10 years, cultural significance. So like we can talk revenues and we can talk monopolies and stuff, but you know, today, and it has been for probably 15, 20 years, you Google it, right? Did you Google that? Just go Google it. I'm starting to hear, did you ask ChatGPT? Like, will Google it be culturally significant in 10 years as it is right now? Or will there be something else that's more like ask an AI that's like, that's what we do now. We don't Google it anymore, really. Or if we do, we don't say that. Now we're saying this other thing. What do you think? That might be a proxy for their success over the next 10 years.
Well, I mean, the pundits have been saying the search bar is dead, right?
Yeah.
And it ain't dead yet, but I mean, I guess it's mortally wounded at this point. Right. So I expect that Google will look very different in 5 to 10 years, right? You'll still Google things, but it will be a much friendlier experience, would be my guess. And by the way, I don't think they it's funny. I mean, of course, it'll never change, but I don't think they like using Googling as a verb for this, whatever the trademarking reasons, you know what I mean? So it's because people will be like, I Googled it on Bing. I Googled it on
I know. But like, it's kind of like, sorry guys, you know, I hate being the de facto standard that everybody refers to as the verb, right? It's like, here's the world's smallest violin. Yeah.
Tied again.
Well, for this call, I did not chat GPT your name. I Googled your name and dug through links because that's what I wanted. So contextually, I wanted a list of links. I did not want a dissertation of who Steve Yegge was.
Right.
Because I'm sure they can be.
ChatGPT can give you that.
Right. And ChatGPT isn't going to give me a bunch of, I mean, it can maybe give me resources and sites and things, but I've never actually had it give me a link that I'm aware of, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to keep in mind here is the models don't know, I mean, they don't know everything. They've looked at a lot of stuff.
Right.
They're very good at pattern detection and completions and all the other things, but they don't actually like have perfect memory and recollection of everything they've looked at. It's almost like taking a person and letting them read a bunch of books. And they'll remember stuff about the books, right? But they won't even always be necessarily accurate. Yeah. If you see the Gettysburg Address printed in 100 different books, then they'll eventually memorize the text of the Gettysburg Address, right? But for the most part, they're just kind of. So what they need is they need other data stores, and Google's is like the biggest, right? Google has all of these really bespoke, custom, fine-tuned backends for every possible knowledge topic, and so it's really just a rejiggering of the form factor for Google, right? That, you know, putting a more AI sort of like, I don't know, interaction model in front of what already exists is very mature search infrastructure.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't think Google is in any trouble.
I'll tell you what, I know exactly how they win. If they're listening, they should do this. This is exactly how they remain relevant. 10 years from now. Let me tell you, their cash cow is the ad monopoly.
Right.
And the way you win there is with relevance and quality. When I search, I ignore because it's not relevant or quality. If they increase that relevance and quality, the way that Amazon has, the way that Instagram has, or even TikTok in some cases, they're not ads, they're just creators being paid on there. They make a living on there. So they're kind of ads, they're kind of like walking ads or living ads. Relevance and quality. If they become Bezos obsessed on relevance and quality in their ad department, in every way, shape, and form, they can win.
Interesting. I bet they've never thought of that before.
I guarantee they haven't. You know why they haven't?
Yeah, because
it sucks already. Relevance and quality is not there, ad-wise.
My hypothesis is that because there's a third dimension that they've decided to optimize for, which is money.
Right.
Which is another form of winning, I guess. But it would make for bad ads.
I would pay more as an advertiser if you let me deliver relevance and quality that also equated to money for both of us.
I think the advertisers all want to pay less, though. You're probably unique.
Maybe you actually pay less in that way. You force relevance and quality. The people who want to be low quality and low relevance, who need to be there, literally need to pay to get, views or eyeballs or whatever you call it. They'd probably pay a lot more than those who truly are relevant and truly are high quality. So maybe you optimize for those who really need to claw to get there, and the ones who really deserve and have that kind of quality, maybe they pay less. I don't know, but relevance and quality is the levers.
I'll tell you, quality comes at the expense of privacy in ads.
It does. I don't know. How does Instagram do it? How does Amazon do it?
They trample your privacy like sociopaths.
Okay. Right. And there's an uncanny valley of quality where when it gets too close to home, which is too good, specifically Instagram, now you start having people say, I think they're listening to me. I think they know.
They do. Yeah, it's 100%. You can talk about some random topic in front of Alexa and you'll start seeing ads for it.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I mean, that's quality though, because it's so relevant to your life. Like,
what is? Because quality means intent, really. It means like, relevance, right? They're all related, right? It's intent if you search for something.
Right.
Yeah, we all want relevance and quality. And of course, Google wants to give you, and all these advertisers want to give you the relevant, high quality.
Well, we don't want creepy. So like there's this weird rub there, right?
That's the problem. That's exactly the rub, man, is that, they need to know a lot about you, potentially through mechanisms that you don't really want them to be using in order to show you something that's relevant to you. And that there is the crux of the problem.
How do we bake? I mean, this is not a show on search relevance, but how do we bake in opt-in relevance then? Because I would certainly opt into some relevance, like at my own discretion. Don't be sneaky about it. Give me a chance to tell you what's relevant to me. And then I would happily take.
Opt-in relevance is called a click.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, like click the ad.
Click the ad or search something, right? If I search something or if I engage with something, that's kind of like if I knew that as a user, like, hey, when you engage in my platform with X, Y, or Z, that's opt-in relevance. And I'm going to give you more because you're going to want this. This is how the platform works. So get used to it. If you're here and playing, you opt by these rules. You play by these rules.
I can't believe you guys got me talking about ads. I hate I got ads twice in my career and said, no, never again. And then done it again, maybe three times.
All right. Here's a good transition off of ads then. Yeah. So 5 years ago, 2017, you joined SourceGraph. This was like, did you come out of retirement to join SourceGraph, or was that just a kind of a cool way of saying it? Were you actually retired?
Yeah.
You retired. So after Google, you're like, I'm done.
Yeah, I was working on my house mostly.
Okay. Building a house?
I built a really nice studio. I'm sitting here. I can see 9 guitars from where I'm sitting.
Nice.
Piano and ukulele and a mandolin. And yeah, man.
All right. So
I was living the dream.
So the dream turned out to not be so hot. I mean, how come you come out of retirement then? Why don't you just live the dream?
I guess it's possible to start climbing the walls, even in your own private castle with all the guitars you ever want. You climb the walls.
Okay.
I missed people. I'm a bit of an introvert, but also, I miss working with people. I miss solving great problems. I know a bunch of folks who did exactly the same thing I did, right? Retire for 2 years, and then they're like, I got to get back into this. Honestly, truthfully, and this is just my personal opinion, and it's it could be just complete astrology, but I think that there's maybe a correspondence between having a purpose and work can give you that purpose. Of course, there's other things that can as well, but I don't feel like I'm ready to sit down and just start writing novels all day long yet. And that purpose will I think, help you live a longer and fuller life. I really do. Retiring at the age that I did might have actually wound up aging me prematurely. I worry. But who knows? Who knows? In any case, I'm having fun. It's super.
Those 2 years that you were retired?
Yeah.
And then you can't. And how long you been back in it?
Gosh, I think it's since September, late September. So going on 10 months maybe.
How old are you?
How old am I? I'm 54.
Okay. And after these 10 months, you're in it. You're back in the game. You're working. Do you feel more satisfaction? Do you feel more fulfilled? Do you feel like you feel better?
Yeah, I've lost weight. I've had more energy. It's interesting. Retiring turned me into sort of a video game drooling zombie, and I didn't like that. And I was kind of reminded of Borodane saying that he has to spend all of his time coming up with stratagems to keep him from turning into that guy that sits on the couch and plays video games.
Right.
And so I was kind of inspired by that. And that's a part of why I came back out of retirement.
That's crazy.
Makes sense. It's just funny timing. We just had a show with Kelsey Hightower, who just retired from Google at age 42, I think he is. And he's like literally in week 2 now at this point. And so he's like, I'm going to see how it's going. But, you know,
we will see. I when I retired, I was like, man, I am done.
Right.
And, my buddy Mark Porter is like, I give you 2 years.
Oh, you drilled it.
He's retired twice. And both times his wife said, you need to get out of the house.
Yeah, for real. I mean, having something to truly push up a mountain is fulfilling. You know, we like struggle. Struggle is necessary for life. You need, some people get upset when they have fear or they have doubt. Those are just feedback mechanisms, or even anxiety is a feedback mechanism for your body. Pain even, this is just a feedback. It's not bad. You don't want to remove pain. You want to remove fear or even anxiety. Like these are things you need. It's calculus. When a car goes down a road, it doesn't not feel friction against the wind. It needs that. It's aerodynamics. It holds it to the ground and it gives it ability to hit the turn harder or whatever it might be. Same thing for human beings and their purpose. Like you need that pushback to life,
You sound like a great leader, Adam. You need fear. Fear motivates you.
You do. That's what I tell myself. I lead myself. I somewhat lead Jared to some degree. I mean, we co-lead each other, as you've said before.
I'm kind of kidding though, because I mean, like it is important, basically training data for your brain.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole, when I said feet to the fire, you learn with your feet to the fire.
Right. So many people want to remove it though. They want to remove these things. I don't want fear.
Right.
I don't want anxiety. Those are feedback mechanisms. Leverage them.
Right. When they disappear for 2 years, they're replaced with Cheetos.
Well, like you said, Steve, at the beginning, like those moments when you're learning, like there's when your feet are to the fire, right? Like you're actually growing. It hurts. It's scary. It's unpleasant, but you're growing as a human being. You're actually expanding and becoming better. One thing I say often is that nothing notable ever happens when you're sitting home watching Netflix. Like you never go out and tell your friends the story of the other night when you watched yet another series on Netflix. Like the stories of your life happen at the uncomfortable, outside of your comfort zone, weird times. And like those are the ones you want to tell your kids later. So it's all part and parcel of the same thing. You're back in the game now. Okay, so why SourceGraph then? I mean, you probably could have went anywhere, right? You probably could have got a job.
Literally why and literally how. How did you get wooed back to the game? The exact story.
I mean, there wasn't much to it. My buddy from Temporal Cadence. It used to be called, I forget. I think it's Temporal now. Really cool system. The CEO is a buddy of mine. Introduced me to Quinn and Beyond, and we chatted and found that there was a lot of alignment and overlap and interest. I mean, they're just cool, right? I mean, SourceGraph is just super cool. Mm-hmm. Honestly, once I realized, man, I got to get out of the house, right, and get out of retirement. Mark was right. Then I started talking to companies, and I talked to 21 or 22 different companies, and I'm talking about like interviewed with 21 or 22 different companies, and had the conversations with them, for a bunch of executive positions and heads and VPs and blah blah. A lot of them were banks, oddly enough, and a lot of them were ads related, which I really didn't wanted. And I was trying to find something that I could be passionate about, something that I would just like. It wouldn't be work. You know what I mean? It wouldn't feel like work. It would be work, but I mean, it would be rewarding enough. And I don't feel like working at a bank would do that for me, honestly, even the cool one like Cap One, and because they're very tech savvy and they use AWS and whatever. So ultimately, I mean, I took a look at the options and I was like, yeah, I mean, God, I mean, they're pre-IPO, Series D. They've got, money in the bank. They've got an incredible culture. They've got really cool tech. I looked into their tech and it had finally reached the point, after 10 long years, because they focused on search first, which is a huge, hard problem. And then eventually they came around to code intelligence. And so that's when they started talking to me, when they had that stuff off the ground. And that's the stuff I did at Google. And it dovetailed really nicely. And right after I joined in September, did some sort of, kind of like cultural maneuvering to make sure that everybody knew that we were going to be a high performance culture going forward, but without the tyranny. And everybody actually wound up being super excited about that. We wound up with a really cool, high functioning team. And then in November, LLMs landed. ChatGPT landed on November 30th, right? At which point we kind of looked at each other, and because we had already been working with AI, with natural language code search, and that set us up. That actually set us up to basically build Cody in a couple of weeks, on V1. And so it's just I was lucky. It was an unbelievably lucky fit for I think all of us.
Really?
Yeah.
Seems so premeditated. I mean, based on your history.
Well, I mean, they say luck favors the prepared, right? I mean, I talked to 21 companies, so maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it was hard work and hard searching. But I'm grateful that I found SourceGraph, and I'm really, really, really excited to be on this journey with them because it's gotten crazy this year.
Your selection criteria is good, though. The pre-IPO, Series D, great relatable founders. We both know Quinn and Byung. I've known Byung for years. I've known Quinn for at least a year or so. And, I've had great conversations with both of them, and they're down to earth, easy to talk to, just not strange people.
Not sociopaths or?
No.
That's a good point. I don't usually list that reasons for why SourceGraph, but I did talk to a lot of, C-suite people in my journey, and Quinn and Byung are definitely a different cut from the rest, right? Like you say,
they are
unbelievably down to earth. They're just like us. They're just like, they just want to get cool stuff done and hack and have fun and change the world. And that resonated a lot with me. So we clicked, the three of us, and that played a huge role.
Where is this going now that you've built Cody in 2 weeks, which was probably 7 months ago now ish?
Cody 2. Hasn't Cody 2 just come out or something? I saw a blog.
Well, yeah, we did just launch. It was really kind of Cody 1. And so it's the first time anybody could just like use it.
I see.
We have to pay for GPUs for you, basically. Right? So it was a bit of a logistics challenge to actually get Cody out to everybody. Next up is we're going to make it, an even more lovable experience. I mean, like I said before, a lot of your experience with any AI coding assistant, including Copilot, is going to come down to your tolerance for its making mistakes, right? So we're putting together an unbelievable world-class AI team that's pairing up with our code intelligence, our code graph, right? Which is, the thing we've spent 10 years building. It's the external store. Remember I mentioned Google's going to be fine because they have all this incredible search infrastructure that the LLM can use. We're in the same boat, right? We've got fantastic technology, so we can start improving Cody's quality. Because ultimately, look, Cody's great right now if you have a question about your code base, about some stuff you haven't seen, it's new code you haven't seen. But for day-to-day where you already know the code and your IDE's helping you and stuff, maybe Cody doesn't come to mind as your very first stop. And so my goal is, in very short order, we want to make it so that Cody it comes to mind first when you're thinking of, a much broader class of problems. And we do that by making it really, really good. You would be shocked at how much low-hanging fruit there is. I mean, you look at Cody and it does make a fair number of mistakes, but I mean, the ability for us to fix these things it's extraordinary. Everything that we've tried has made it better. So in other words, we're starting with the worst possible implementation of Cody. It's OpenAI, generic sort of Wikipedia embeddings. It's not, I don't even think they're code oriented. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's going to get a lot better. Where are we going with it? I mean, long term, look, I want Cody to be your first stop, when you're coding. One of the things that I was always jealous of, truly envious, right, was about VPs with executive assistants, right? As I was going through my career, was that they were always like a team of 2 people. And they were always incredibly productive, and the VP never had to go to the printer, right? Never had to do any of the the expense reports and stuff that engineers are always having to do, and the VPs were always freed up, right? I mean, honestly, that's what Cody should be for a developer, right? Is oh man, I got some stuff I need to get done that I really need to get done or that I'm struggling with. Let me just have the AI help with it, right? That's honestly that's where I want to take it,
right?
And it's so early days right now. I mean, it's really raw right now. It has a lot of value if you play with it, but still, I mean, you probably find that it also has a lot of mistakes. But the way I see it, I mean, this is inevitable. This is an inevitability. It's going to happen. It may take a year. It may take 5 years before we're all using it every 10 minutes, but it's inevitable.
If you got to give us a stand-up snap, you're going to say it's inevitable. You can't put that word out there and not snap your fingers.
Snap your fingers.
I'm inevitable.
I forgot about that.
I am inevitable.
Yeah, that's really, I mean, I do agree. I think the reason why and I say the "we" is a real "we," where it's not really my opinion, the pushback against it is that I never thought it would happen in my lifetime, I guess. And so it seems so sci-fi. All you can do is you really have to suspend your disbelief. This is what you do in sci-fi films. That's what makes them magical, is you suspend your belief to believe that Star Wars is possible, that you can shoot lasers at each other, or have these, laser swords. That's not going to happen. Maybe it would happen, actually. I have to suspend my disbelief on that one.
I really like that framing. I really do.
That's the problem, is everyone is having that trouble. It's like, I never thought we would truly have what is considered, buzzword or not, artificial intelligence in my lifetime. And the fact that it's here and we have to explain it on podcasts and be seasoned engineers that have done major things and have innovated, and it's here. It's here in our lifetime. Like, that's kind of unbelievable. And
I love the way you framed it. I love this, Adam. Sorry, go ahead. What's the and?
That's it. Really, just like, I'm just in disbelief that's why it's so hard to believe that it's really here. But now that it is, the point is, it is inevitable. It's here. It's not going to go away. The boat is landed on the land, and all of the trolls, or whatever you want to call them, in this boat, this analogy of a boat, they're coming off and they're getting on land and they're going to start invading. This LLM invasion. That's what's going to happen. Like, it's inevitable. We're going to have a future that's going to have artificial intelligence in it. It's going to be the case. It's not going to be true.
And it'll be polished, right? I mean, like, look at your journey on this show, from Skype and mailing USB sticks around from your guests,
Right.
to Riverside today, right? Stuff gets better. And a lot of engineers are young, and they don't see that the world used to not have AWS and Kubernetes. And, they don't see that, like, and that makes it harder for them to suspend their disbelief. I love your framing, Adam, right? Because right now, if you look at it, you'd be like, well, it's wrong sometimes. Like, that was a huge stumbling block for IDEs in the early days. A lot of Java programmers any strongly typed language wouldn't take an IDE because they weren't accurate all the time until they finally evolved to the point where they were. And during that period, there were a big war between the command line folks and the IDE folks for 5-10 years before finally the IDEs were good enough and everybody was using them. Coding assistance is exactly the same. Okay, it's early days. We're basically getting the early adopters bleeding edge, but it's going to improve in quality and refinement until it's pretty obvious that you have to use it or else you're behind.
Mm-hmm.
And the current state of affairs is kind of like the future's here, but not evenly distributed. And the distribution is like your ecosystem, right? So like if you're coding Python, if you're coding Java, probably things that are well established and have tons of public resources, you have a better experience today than if you're coding in a niche language, a less popular language. I know this personally because I'm an Elixir programmer, and they're not good with Elixir. They just aren't. I see things in other languages. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I wish I could have the right answer for me. So many of the answers are wrong. I don't want to be the skeptic who's like, this will never be good for me. But I do want to be realistic and say, for me today, it's not there. Like, it just doesn't provide very much value. I can see the potential value, and I can see the demos on the social networks where it's like, that's awesome, but it's not evenly distributed. I'm not writing that mainstream language. And so that stuff will obviously, everything will catch up eventually.
That's right.
But I believe you that there's so much low hanging fruit. It's got to be fun, because low hanging fruit's the best, right? Like, it's easy to pick. It has the biggest impact. It's the funnest moment. It's like, I can make huge advancements with not very much effort.
There's been magic times I've witnessed, and I've rarely been in one myself, but I see them. Like Borland in the 90s they were the kings of programming languages and compilers. And it was a magical time because all the best compiler writers in the world, the kind of, not all, but probably a good, a big chunk of them kind of congregated at Borland, right? And then Microsoft bought them all, right? And was like, haha. And then they all went to Microsoft, and there was this innovation magical time then when they built .NET and C# and that whole stack, right? And those don't happen very often. There were a few at Google. Things get built by small teams in a hurry, and then there's just a lot of shipping and polishing and deployment and engineering and stuff. But it's hard to get those magical innovation loops. You know what I mean? Like, everybody's always too busy to like innovate. And so when you can catch them and get people together, and there are low hanging fruit in the space, and you're in this innovation loop, it's incredible because every week it's demo, everybody's demoing to each other. It's exciting. You're seeing, meaningful, incredible advancements, like week over week. That's where we are today. That's where we are today at SourceGraph. And it's just incredibly, incredibly fun and gratifying. But it's also, we're turning the ship, the vehicle we're in so hard that, we're starting to strain the chassis a little bit, but it's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited now. I don't even work there, but just the fact that y'all are doing this, and you're not the only ones doing it. I mean, there's people innovating. There's tons of excitement right now.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's going to be goodness coming out on the other side for everybody. So that's exciting. Anything else we didn't ask you? You're like, man, I've been waiting an hour and a half for these guys to ask this question, but they're too dense. They didn't even think about it.
No, this has been a lot of fun. I love that you guys let me tell some of these crazy old Amazon stories.
Are there any, did we miss any? Are there any other stories where you haven't told them yet? And you're like, I'll just shove this one in at the end. Well, I'm here for it.
Oh gosh, yeah. Let's see if I can find a good Amazon story. You know, I've made Jeff actually laugh. You've all heard Jeff Bezos's laugh,
Oh, yeah.
right? Ha, 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 ha. That's actually curated, of course, right? It's part of his brand
Is
image.
it part of his thing?
Yeah, because I've made him giggle.
Oh, he has a giggle.
Nice. There you go.
Oh, nice. So that's breaking news.
It sure is.
If you had a soundbite of that, you can put it against that picture of him with his shirt off. You know, the one that's popular now where he's like all ripped and jacked, and you could have just him giggling to counteract that.
I actually remember the joke where I made him laugh too. I was at a meeting with Jeff and like, I don't know, 40 or 50 people. Like it was all of his leadership. And I was giving a presentation and I stopped and I said, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And suddenly everybody was staring at me, including Jeff. And I said, I'm not the elephant. And he just like lost it.
Nice.
Winging it.
Oh man.
Just winging it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I could probably pour more customer stories of people who got completely screwed, but I don't know. You know,
That could be its own podcast. You know, it's almost like
Totally
it could be a recurring podcast.
I think somebody should, to be honest, because I mean, somebody from ex-Amazon, because there are so many stories that are just going to be lost to the annals of time that would just be wonderful to share about, you know, things that can go wrong that are just unexpectedly like almost emergent, you know, bug behaviors. And then how do you clean it up as a business and then monetize on it, right? Because like
Right.
Grab didn't learn this lesson. I'm serious. I went to Grab. We didn't talk about Grab. Grab was an amazing Southeast Asia adventure. It was a lot of fun. And they emulated Amazon and very successfully. They are kind of the Amazon of Southeast Asia. But they never really got that particular lesson.
We've imagined a podcast of postmortems, you know, where everybody could learn from the mistakes of everybody else after an incident or after something happens. And it's always kind of been stuck at, well, who wants to come on the air and like air their dirty laundry of these postmortems?
They don't. You know what? I tried to do that at Grab when I first got there. And I was like, they were like, we should do a public. They had a horrible, horrible outage because of etcd. It had a huge meltdown and it's terrible. And to restart. And they actually, Grab didn't know how their service dependency graph, they had circular dependencies and they didn't know how to restart their whole system if it went down. So it took hours and hours. And of course, in Grab in Southeast Asia, when the system goes down, people can't get to school, they can't get to work, they can't get to church, and they start throwing rocks. And then the governor calls, and then, you know, the president calls, and
Oh, my
it's
goodness.
a big deal, right? Yeah, I could tell you all kind of Grab stories. When Grab makes changes, people come and throw bricks through their windows.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, very different.
That's high
And so
stakes.
they were like, we should do a postmortem and tell everybody what happened here. And so I wrote a really, really good, entertaining, you know, funny, you know, postmortem about what happened with that CD and the history of like how we were trying to diagnose it. I was ready to publish and they were very uncomfortable with it. And the leadership was like, we can't, I don't think we should. And they eventually pushed back and they didn't want me to, and I was new, you know, partly an Asian thing, but also partly a people thing, right? There are definitely tech culture differences that we butted up against from the Westerners as the outsiders.
Sure.
Right. And they're not big on vocal self-criticism. Okay. That's a core value at Amazon. And it is an anti-pattern in Asia. Okay. Do not be vocally self-critical. And I was basically being vocally self-critical with this postmortem post, and they were like, no.
Not doing it.
The world never learned the lesson. This is a problem. This is just like the problem of genomics and medicines. They can't make good medicines because they can't get trial data because of privacy, right? It's always a data problem, like lurking in the back here.
Well, I have one more question about Cody. You got a couple. I think this might be one of the. Yeah, this is a second episode. I couldn't find episode 1. Cody is cheating. This is from Cody is cheating. Which explain this to me, because you said in this episode I will explain our moat, and these are, you know, we talk about moats. What's somebody's moat? How does Google lose their moat? How is this going to lose their moat? What moat do they have? You know, it's all about the moat. I feel like Seinfeld right here.
What's the deal with the moats?
How exactly Cody is differentiated? This is what you say over all the other coding assistants, and you said, hey, they're going to be here. They're not going to go away. They're inevitable. And you go on to say, including Copilot and why we will always be the leader. Those are strong words. And then you say in episode 3, you're going to come up with something else. But then you said this. You said, did I mention I'm lucky? Well, this is the World Poker Tournament. I love the words you use when you write, by the way. This is the World Poker Tournament of software showdowns. This is the big one. And I got pocket rockets because there's truly no comparison to Cody. We're so far ahead it's blowing people's minds at Copilot shops. You'll see soon enough. Give us that soon enough. That was 2 months ago, basically, this post.
The soon enough, yeah.
Yeah, the soon enough. What's, you say you're so far ahead.
Software does take time to build, so you're going to see us iterate towards this. But,
Sure.
what I was talking about here is, it's funny, it's sitting in a tab right next to the one that I'm in right now. It's a 1,000-page research paper that just got published on the intersection of knowledge graphs and LLMs, okay? Our knowledge graph, we have a knowledge graph is what we have about your code, and not just your code, but the metadata around it, like ownership and security vulnerabilities and a bunch of other stuff. Source graph, that's what source graph does, is they just learn everything about your environment, right? And that is the defensible part, because it took a very, very long time for me to build that at Google. And I knew that it was going to be almost impossible to build it for the world, because the world uses Git and Perforce and SVN, and they use different languages more than Google does, and different build systems more than Google does. So SourceGraph tackled an extremely difficult problem. Quinn and Biong went after what I wanted to do, right? When I was back at Google, which was to offer, Grok and code search to the world, and Quinn and Biong did it. And, kudos and respect, because they had to handle all the enterprise scaling and all the buildup of that. But now that's what they have. That's our moat. Because what you can do is you can use that graph data in many, many, many ways. This is what I was talking about that low-hanging fruit. You can inject it into your embeddings to improve their quality. Very trivially, you can inject it into your prompts for in-context learning. You can generate few-shot examples with it. You can validate the outputs of the LLM. It goes on and on and on. That graph is an amazing asset that SourceGraph has. Now, there are other people in this space, like, I don't know, I don't really follow them, but there's a bunch of really cool, cool looking, slick coding assistants. But really all they are is a proxy to the LLM. They don't have this independent, authoritative source of compiler grade, like metadata about your code base that SourceGraph has, that the LLM can also use, right? Cody can go look up stuff in the graph. It knows GraphQL. In fact, I don't even need to know GraphQL. I ask Cody to do the queries for me, right? So that's our moat. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. You said in quotes, why will always be the leader? That's an absolute. Always.
Putting your stake in the ground.
Well, so of course, leader is of course another one that
definition
could mean various things.
Sure. Not the best.
This comes back to a point that I made earlier, which is that big companies are necessarily, because of the entire Gordian knot that gets created around the investors and the sales and the shareholders and the quarterly earnings reports and the expectations, the commitments, and the quality that people expect, they are stuck. It's called the innovator's dilemma.
Right.
They cannot be as aggressive as we can. It'll actually it'll be problematic for them in a number of ways. Now they may try. I'm sure they can try, but my prediction is that we're always going to be a little edgier, like going out with things that are a little more raw, a little less polished, but still very powerful, right? And that's what I mean, right? Is that we're always, I think that we have more, we just, as a smaller company, just like we have to watch out for the 10 people startups, because they on UI and stuff, they're iterating faster than we are. If you're smaller, you can iterate really fast. And thank goodness, right, we have this 10 years of, code graph, behind us that we can use as building blocks in this race, which is truly going to go on for the next 5, 10, 20 years. It's begun. The race is on, right? It's just started. This firing gun just went off.
Okay. So given that, let's imagine now. Let's just say I'm prompting you, okay?
I'm an LLM.
This is what I tell ChatGPT sometimes. Yeah, I'm telling LLM sometimes. Imagine, act as if you're a doctor of programming, right? You have a piece of paper in front of you. You're going to write a prescription for all developers. And from this podcast, they're listening. They're on the edge. They're like, man, okay, Steve's going to tell me what to do. This is inevitable. It is the future. You may very well be, you being Cody and SourceGraph, be a leader in this future. What should developers do today to ensure they follow the letter to this inevitability from this podcast? Is it go play with Cody? Is it go play with everything out there? What's the prescription you can write for the majority of software developers to not be left behind today?
Well, I mean, obviously Cody's the easy button there, because you can just download it and use it. It's free. But really, I have written this prescription for several people recently, okay? And I know what the prescription is, okay? The prescription is, it's time. Learn AI, okay? I put it off for my entire career. I learned linear algebra and a little bit about neural nets way back in the day, and then went for 20, 25 years ignoring it. And you can no longer safely ignore it as an engineer. Okay, it is going to start overlapping and intruding into your life more and more, and you're not going to be able to separate AI from engineering here pretty soon. Look what's happening at Google. All the engineers are being told to learn AI. Okay, it will happen to kind of everybody at some point. AI is like a new, it's like it's been mixed into the atmosphere and there's no getting it out, right? So
it's like salt and pepper in a shaker, in the same shaker. You can't separate the salt and pepper.
It is. You can't unmix them, but it's different than it was 20 years ago. Okay, it's leveled up. It's just like today. You don't have to learn assembly language. You don't have to learn, a machine, code or whatever that stuff is below assembly language.
Or GraphQL.
You don't learn GraphQL either, right? So learning this stuff is easier, but every engineer needs to familiarize themselves with the foundational concepts that are in play with LLMs today, because first of all, it will make you more effective. You'll just be better at like pulling off the shelf tools, including the large language models for your own work. But second, it's just right. I mean, like the broader form of my prescription is keep learning, right? I've said this my whole career. I don't think it's anything new, right? You should be always reading papers, reading books, catching up. Like college was not the end of learning. College taught you how to teach yourself, right? So now everybody should just be continuing to take time and teach themselves. And I took it upon myself to finally, I told you I'm 54. My brain ain't exactly as springy as it used to be, right? And it's been 30 years since I took a linear algebra course. And yet I forced myself to learn as much as possible. And I continue to force myself to learn this stuff and become an AI guy. Okay, because it's time. It's here, right? Don't ignore it or you'll be in last place. That's my prescription.
Okay, let's get a second prescription to this then. Once they learn it, what should they do then?
Go play with Cody. Once they'll know. You'll know because you'll just know. You'll be like, oh, wow, I could do that. That's what you'll say.
The reason why I ask you this, because I'm talking to like companies and people and they're like, well, I gotta put AI. So I have lots of conversations behind the scenes with would-be and potential sponsors and partners and different things we do. And more recently, I talked to Abid Noda, who is founder of DX, and he knows he needs to put artificial intelligence in it because it's essentially surveys to improve developer efficiency. SourceGraph may even be a customer. I don't even know. But the point is, it's all text, it's all learning. But it's so hard to like parse that. You want to take this large survey that everybody gave back and you want to inject AI somehow. Well, then you've got to take your prescription and say, okay, I'm willing to learn artificial intelligence. I'm willing to go to the ground with it and get it all. But then it's like, how do I apply it? And everybody sort of needs to inject or embed AI into their product some way, shape, or form. And you say, you'll know from this learning. I was hoping for more of a silver bullet if you had one, like specifics.
Well, I mean, at that point, like AI is always the same. Like AI is a very well established, even with LLMs, it hasn't fundamentally changed the basic game, which is you establish benchmarks with human evals that say, this is good, this is bad. Let's teach the computer what's good and bad. Okay, these are the foundational concepts you need to learn because then you have an idea. Let's say you have an idea, Adam. You're like, you know what? My product is a photo browser. I'd love it if the AI could like make recommendations based on my photos of whatever, right? Something I should buy or something I should eat or whatever. Knowing the foundational concepts that I just learned as a middle-aged, old dude, right? This year. Okay, because the resources are unbelievable. It's not like it was 20 years ago or 15 or even 10 years ago. You've got YouTube and you've got all these like amazing tutorials and visualizations and all this stuff, right? It's very accessible now. Once you learn the foundational the technique of like whatever it is you're doing, it's basically going to be evaluation and experiments. And you say, did it work? Did it improve my benchmark? That's it. And you just iterate your way. It's so quantitative that there are leaderboards for it. You guys know Hugging Face, right?
Yeah.
Literally, it's a giant, it's like video games. Like literally everybody's like, they're leaderboards. AI has been a big gamified competition for 20 years. And so once you're in AI, you realize how it works. You're like, oh, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to make our product better in the following ways. We're going to set up the following experiments, and we're just going to keep picking the one that worked the best. That's it. There's nothing to it. After that, it's just learning the tools and the names and stuff.
Cool.
Nothing to it but to do it, and the time is now.
So I know the prescription. I know it feels like a bit of a suppository, but it really is. It is something that I strongly recommend that people do. I know everyone's kind of lazy and kind of doesn't want to do it, but seriously, and it's fun too, right? I mean, like seriously, I ignored AI, like purpose, even at Google for so long. And I'm telling you now, you shouldn't ignore it anymore. You guys both sound exceedingly disappointed by this.
No.
What do you want my silver bullet to be? You wanted a silver bullet.
No. It's not that really. No, I think any answer is great. You got a lot of wisdom, and I think your prescription was spot on. Your second part of it was mostly there, but we'll improve it over time, right?
Yeah,
no problem there.
Iterate.
Yeah.
Come back and answer it. Give us another prescription. Come back, give us another one.
It's really been fun going through your history and like hearing this experience, because I think
for sure
one thing that I think Jared and I both love about this show is we have a diverse set of people on this show from all sorts of different backgrounds. Young French dudes who make the first an Oculus Rift open source version of it, like that kind of thing, from folks like you that have a lot of experience in history, and not just years, but like diverse. I've been here, I've been there, and you've been bold enough to push back. You've been bold enough to get Jeff Bezos to giggle and then also leave whenever the criteria no longer met your desires. This no longer innovates, this is too conservative, or this is not that anymore. And I think people need to hear stories like yours, because that's how we all sort of learn. We hear stories, back to the storytelling. That's what's key. And that's what the real magical thing of this show is like, there's no perfect Steve Yegge episode here, or at least the first one. I'm hoping and sure we'll have you back to share more.
Thanks for having me. I really, that's what you're saying is resonating. I really do think that we need to share more. Like, companies tend to be really closed up, you know, but we're just people. Let's share more.
For sure. So sourcegraph.com/Cody. And, we're fans of SourceGraph here. We've been sponsored by SourceGraph before. We've been fans of SourceGraph for many years, and I'm rooting for you all. I like your moat. I hope it gets bigger, and I hope it gets fortified. So good luck on that.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. This was awesome.
Okay, so next week on the pod, Solomon Hikes comes back to talk about Dagger, and really, we catch up on the days of Docker, really since he's left, and all the things that has transpired in his life, really, to get to the point of creating Dagger and what they're doing there. Hey, we're users of Dagger, so we kind of have a little bit of experience to some degree with it. So come back next week. We'll have that show for you. And of course, there's a bonus. There's a bonus today on this show, but it's only for our Changelog Plus subscribers, our beloved yearly and monthly members who directly support us. They drop the ads and they get a little closer to the metal with bonus content like today and more. Check it out at changelog.com/plus+. $10 a month, $100 a year. Support us directly. And for that, we will love you. We love you either way, but we'll love you a little bit more. And we'll show you too. Okay, so big thanks to our friends at Fastly, Fly, and our friends at TypeSense. And Breakmaster Cylinder, those beats, they're banging. Gotta love them. But that's it. This show's done. We'll see you again on Friday.
King